So as we look at the giants, one of the things a friend of mine has been on me for the last year about, right, is starting another REIT and opening another REIT. And this is not a solicitation for security. This is something that will be in the future, that'll be a part of the RAD family and the RAD portfolio. But the company and the gentleman I'm about to introduce has built an incredible business. And I think they're a visionary when it comes to the housing industry. I think they're a visionary when it comes to construction. How many of you understand that there is a multi-million unit shortage in the housing industry right now? Raise your hands, right? Multi-million unit shortage. And anytime there's a scarcity of anything, how many of you want to be the provider of the solution and the answer? I do. And so one of the things my friend has been on me for the last year is he's saying, Dutch, you got to open a REIT with us. Dutch, you got to open a REIT with us. Dutch, you got to open a REIT with us, right? And as we've done podcasts together, how many of you have watched the RAD podcast, right? Raise your hands, right? You got to watch more and more of the RAD podcast. We have incredible people, right, that have been on our podcast, and I look forward to having our next fireside chat, our next guest speaker on our podcast as well. But I want you to bring up an incredible man who's been a part of an incredible vision that is revolutionizing the housing industry for our next fireside chat. Paulo Tiramani, come on up, brother. Come on up.
Just like everything else, those old crazy dreams just kind of came and went. Oh, but ain't that America for you and me? Ain't that America something to see, baby? Ain't that America home of the free? Yeah, little pink houses for you. Oh, baby, for you and me.
Now, he wanted to do the picture, so we're going to do the picture like we were UFC fighters, right?
That's right.
So he wanted to get that picture,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
For the fireside
That's it.
chat, right? For
He's
you guys.
He's a big motherfucker, though, so I'm not sure. Am I allowed to?
I might be. You can say whatever you want, brother. You can say
No,
whatever you
let's
want.
say it. I got David
All right,
here.
one more time. There we go, right? There we go, right?
Thank you.
Right? All right, so go ahead and have a seat, Paulo. Have a seat.
Right.
So, you know, Paulo's son and I have become friends, right, over the last year, and I've been watching and I've been observing and I've been learning about their market and their industry. So one of the things, did you get to see the picture yet?
Yes.
You did. So we have established our newest REIT entity, right? It is not open for investment yet, but it will be in the future, right? And that's the RAD Boxable REIT. How many of you think that's pretty cool? Pretty cool, right? Pretty cool, right?
Pretty cool.
And so as we get into what Boxable is, I'll let you, for those, how many of you are familiar with Boxable? Raise your hands. How many of you, Boxable is a little bit of a foreign conversation for you? Raise your hands. Okay. Why don't you just kind of give people a quick snippet of Boxable before we get into the Q&A and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay?
Thanks, Dutch. So Boxable has been created to solve the housing crisis, just a very small task. Building construction today is really pre-industrial. By pre-industrial, I mean it's not built in a factory. It's not built in a factory because they're big, which means that they're built on site, literally in an open field, which means it's all regional business. The largest factory companies making buildings are about 70,000 square feet in terms of the factory space, and they can only ship 200 miles. or thereabouts. Boxable is still, I consider to be in a sort of a prototype stage, and our factory is already 400,000 square feet. And we've solved a lot of those first principles and problems that allows building construction to be in a factory, take advantage of a modern world, and ship through regional factories globally. And that should do three things: lower the cost, raise the quality, and raise the speed to really lightning fast speed. To buy the product, buy buildings in the same way we buy everything else, through Amazon, and expect high quality and accountability from the producer. Boxable is a for-profit company, but we did start it as a good works project to fix a big problem.
Yeah. So tell people before Boxable, what did you do?
So prior to Boxable, I had a crazy business. I'm basically an inventor. I'm an industrial designer, mechanical engineering, I have a couple of degrees. And I had an IP licensing company. An IP licensing company is intellectual property licensing company. And I had a team, and we sat around and we invented product and licensed it to industry. In the same way that an author or a songwriter or a book writer would get paid a royalty for every time the song is played or the book is sold, we did that with products in many, many different industries, and did that for a number of decades. It's pretty profitable, really became almost an annuity business. Cash just poured in. And as with all things, sometimes the grass is greener. And for years I thought to myself, I think I'd like to be an operator in a space as opposed to a licensor. And if we're going to be an operator in a space, let's fix a big problem. So we didn't come up with the idea first because we're sort of professional inventors. We came up with the problem first and then backed in an idea. So that's my background, all intellectual property, mechanical engineering. And in my core, I am an industrial designer.
And so I guess your product is kind of protected a little bit.
Yeah, so I think we have something like 160, well, I think no, Boxable alone has, I think, about 60, 65 patent filings. But I would add that really, in terms of the sort of defensive realm, patents are just one layer. Really, it's technique, know-how, scale, money. And also, I'm not sure that we don't want competitors. The market is so big, we want to fix a problem. We're trailblazing through certifications and a lot of problems. And people backfill in behind us, more power to them. I think we'll probably actually help them. I mean, we would actually help them be successful.
Yeah, pave the way.
Yeah.
Well, cool. So these are all investors in here, right? And a lot of them, how many of you have invested in Boxable prior to this, right? And so we can have a few more Boxable investors at the end of this weekend for sure. And I know this isn't a time where you're offering a security, right? But talk to people a little bit about what they should be looking at, right? You've been an investor for a long time yourself. What should be people looking at when they make investments? What makes a good investment into a business versus a bad investment?
Yeah, so I have been an investor for a long time. I've invested in a bunch of different technology, all the usual suspects that we all invest in and do very well. And really, I don't really have a tremendous amount of investment advice. I'm more on the design and engineering side of things. But so I probably sort of default to popular wisdom from people smarter than me, like Buffett, that says, know the product, look at the management, look at who's leading it, look at what they want to do, where they want to go. Do they have something unique? Do they have something protectable? If they don't have market share, are they on a track directionally to get market share? And then perhaps with sort of longer term investments, when is it over? When is the party over? When is the party over? For example, I had maybe I shouldn't say this, but I'll say it. I had a pretty large position with Apple for I think 18, so it's 15 years. And I nixed the whole thing out, took the hit, took the long-term capital gains, plus 25%, and put it all on Tesla, because I look at directionally where they're going. I don't see a car company. I see artificial intelligence. I see robots. I see self-driving cars. I see a genius at the helm. What else do you need to know? Sold Apple, bought Tesla. So that's my sort of pocket wisdom on investing.
Yeah, and there's good wisdom in that too, right? Because one had a founder who built something unique and incredible, right? And that founder passed away. and it turns into a board of directors, right? Running an organization. And I think that starts to change the DNA of an organization. It's something to consider when you're making investments, whereas, Elon is still at the top, still a founder, right? Still pushing and driving, right? Even Amazon, right? Bezos is no longer running the ship, steering the ship anymore. And so, that game has even changed with Amazon, right? And so it's not that Walmart's, with the Waltons, right? Not that Walmart might be the right investment, for some people at certain times, but timing is critical when it comes to making an investment, right? And when your timing is off, your risk exponentially, for me, goes up. When you have a company that doesn't exist yet, with no profit, no revenue, no actual, right, tangible product, right, is something you have to be very careful about, because sometimes it's easier, right, to sell an idea than it is to sell an actual, tangible, real product. And so as you're looking at business, especially in the crowdfunding space, right, and I know there's a lot of my crowdfunding friends or a lot of my startup businesses, right, they're going to hate what I'm about to say, right? But if a business hasn't made $1 yet, for me, that becomes a very difficult business to invest into, and it's going to be in my highest risk bucket. Now, one of the things about Boxable is you guys not only have made money, right, but your waiting list is this monstrous waiting list, right? So talk to me a little bit about, what does your waiting list look like? What is the demand for your product?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I think that's just right. At the end of the day, show me. Prototypes are fairly easy to produce. They're fairly easy to gloss over. We've all seen, electric trucks being pushed downhill with no motors, things like that. I'm not going to name names, Nicola, but things like that. Things like that. So, how quickly can you get to market? How quickly? And, profitability, are we talking about, direct costs versus total investment, total capital investment in the company? Boxable is interesting. We're seeing explosive growth. I think 2.5 years ago, we were in a 10,000 square foot R&D lab. 18 months ago, we moved into a 170,000 square foot facility, started building homes. That facility is up to now 400,000 square feet, which blows my mind, frankly. Every time I wake up in the morning.
Does anybody in here even comprehend what 400,000 square feet is really like?
It's big. It's really big, several foot. I can't do the math, actually, in my head in terms of acreage. We've managed to raise through crowdfunding, I think about $150, $160 million. I think it's probably one of the most successful crowdfunds out there. I might be wrong about that. I think Grant probably has done better, actually, in terms of crowdfunding. I actually believe we could probably raise $1 billion crowdfunding, because the power of the idea is so strong, and I believe we're executing to date reasonably well. Lots of challenges. Our wait list is about 170,000 for this Casita product, this ADU, accessory dwelling unit. It's about 400,000 square feet.
How many of you would like to even imagine what 1,000 people waiting for your product is, let alone 170,000 people waiting for your product? Is that pretty mind-blowing, right? It's pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah, you got to have broad shoulders, because a lot of people relying on you. Obviously we have a large cap table. We have something like 40,000 investors, and that's exploding. Every day we do Reg A, 75 million a year, and then Reg D from more sort of certified, verified investors. And it's interesting. I mean, when we started, if you can imagine, if I could bring you through my own personal pain points, we went from that R&D factory with a bunch of theory and probably 24 guys 18 months ago. And I think the first house took a couple of months to make. And we had a DoD, Department of Defense order to fulfill for 156 units. You got colonels coming in and telling you off. It's quite interesting. And today, and those first few months, thank goodness OSHA didn't come around. We're very OSHA compliant now, very safety conscious, but it was rough and tumble. It wasn't an automotive manufacturer making another type of car, and they were just drafting in those people. Everything was new, and we went from a couple of dozen people to 200. It's pretty staggering. And today, 18 months later, we've sort of wound the production down, if you can imagine that. We make a house every 4 hours, we make 2 a day on one shift. We could wind that up, but we're going in and fixing all the issues that we need to fix as we get ready to be consumer grade. I think by the end of the year, we'll be down to somewhere between 20 and 40 minutes to build an entire house. And this is what's required. And then one step beyond that, as I said, we got 400,000 square feet today. Actually, this is breaking news. Yesterday we had 300,000 square feet. So I'm not sure I'm supposed to say that actually. So yesterday we had 300,000 square feet, and today we have 400, I think. Boxzilla factory, we call it Boxzilla. We're looking at putting up a much larger factory. That will start in the 1 to 2 million square feet. It'll be a regional facility, go up to about 6 million square feet. And I think we can make, the reach goal is to make a home every 60 seconds, which sounds mind-blowing until you realize Ford and General Motors do exactly that. The Ford 150, they make one every 60 seconds. It's a lot more complicated than a Boxable. So making a home every 60 seconds, highest quality, lowest cost, maximum speed, those are the 3 legs on our stool. That's where we have to go if we're going to actually make a dent in the housing crisis and turn housing, building construction into a consumer product like everything else that you're wearing, everything else in this room. If we wind up being a regional facility, I would consider that a failure. The current factory should be able to make between 5,000 and 6,000 homes a year. That would make us one of the biggest, to be about $300-400 million. At this stage, I would consider that a failure if that's all we do. So the vision is extraordinarily large. And then scale beyond that, we would actually do franchising. Rather like McDonald's. There are actually sort of micro factories, and we would look at that model to franchise overseas. So regional facilities, few regional facilities domestically in our country, within our borders, and then overseas, franchise model. You've got foreign market, foreign taste, foreign laws, foreign distribution. Let those other companies, foreign companies, and countries in some instances bring their capital and know-how so that we can really scale the business. The business has been engineered from at sort of the DNA level for scale.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating thing. Like, one of the reasons we're going to open a Rad Boxable REIT in the future is because we want to be a primary distributor, right? We want to be a primary users, and we want to be able to buy, right? If the Reg A amount, right, raises up to 150 million a year, which it looks like the legislation is going to lead there. Currently it's at 75, right? We'd like to buy $150 million a year worth of boxables in order to deploy, right, into cities and markets across America. Now, how many of you realize that in order to deploy and buy boxables, you've got to own and buy land? How many of you get that, right? And so Rad started its land buying mission back in 2020. And so we started acquiring our first acres and our first land for construction and development, not for 2020, right, but for 2025. And so we looked at the scale of the market, we looked at where things were going, and we started putting down everything from a single lot of land, right, in the city of Philadelphia, all the way out to thousands of acres, right, in corridors between major cities. Now, we don't buy our farmland in order to turn it into development construction land. We buy farmland as farmland. So our development and construction land is actually very separate, right, from our development and construction properties. But how many of you get, like, you've got to start planning these things way out in front. If you don't start planning them now, right, then you'll be behind the market instead of ahead of the market. So Paulo and his team, right, they started looking at things, and you and your son had to start saying, like, this housing shortage isn't that big of a deal yet, but they could see how quickly it was coming. And in America, right, is this for me? Can you guys hear me better now with this mic? It sounds the same, doesn't it? Oh, for the Q&A. Well, one of my team can come and grab this for the Q&A. I'll let one of the guys from the back come and grab it. There you go. Thanks, Vince. And so one of the things we started to realize, right, is that the cost of construction was becoming too expensive to build properties in neighborhoods. A lot of people don't understand that a lot of poverty, right, in America is created culturally, right? And reason a lot of African American communities in America, right, have cultural challenges is because they developed cash markets. Discrimination in the lending industry, right, kept a lot of communities from the ability to be able to buy and sell property and allow property to grow in value, because what developed was cash, markets. Well, what happens is eventually the cost of construction, right, supersedes the cost, right, of housing. And when construction supersedes the cost of housing, nobody wants to build in those neighborhoods anymore. Nobody can rehab, nobody can fix, nobody can repair houses in those neighborhoods. When I bought my first tax deeds, and the cheapest one we ever bought was a $5,000 house in Philadelphia, right? When we first bought that house, there was no way that the cost of construction, right, made it financially smart to go ahead and rehab that house. Waiting a couple years, eventually it got to that point where it made sense to rehab and fix that house. But what Boxables does is it reduces this cost of construction to something that's reasonable, and it can put good housing in good markets. Now, have you guys found financing available to people, right, when it comes to the Boxable product, or is that something you guys are working on?
We can get Paul to use it. We have no mic because his mic's not catching.
Oh, your mic's not catching.
It's fine, yeah, I think it's off to one side. Can everybody hear me okay? Is that better? Can everybody hear me? Okay, I use my big voice? Okay. I use my big voice.
Put on your big boy pants.
Yeah.
Your UFC pants.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, what Dutch is talking about in terms of developers and risk, risk comes in many forms. So for that developer, they have to start putting out money at the get-go, at the beginning, and they have to bring in all the different trades, and they have to start paying as they go. It's not really the best way. The Boxable way is that the developer, who in most instances really just wants to be a marketing company and turn projects, market their communities to prospective homeowners, has to do all these other things. They have to build an open-air factory. It doesn't really work. The Boxable way, they keep their money in their pocket. They have a lot less back-end expenses in terms of everything from architects to accounting. And when they're ready to buy the product, they buy the product, and it just ships next day, next week from the factory. So, debt is tricky, but it's necessary to build any business. And the Boxable product can really help alleviate developers when it comes to that.
Very, very good. And so with Boxable, right, what do you think your fastest to market is? Where's the best place for the Boxable product to be in people's hands?
Yeah, so one of the challenges we've had is with certifications. So again, it's a pre-industrial business. It's our job to grind through state by state with certifications. So you've got HUD, you've got modular, you've got RV, you've got Park RV. It's this crazy, fragmented, makes no sense for mass production. So what we're doing now is we have to grind through state by state with our modular code. Modular building construction is the highest code in the land. The Boxable product is actually quite a bit stronger in a whole bunch of different areas and much better. So we may actually, even at the federal level, have a Boxable code, which would be higher than the modular code, but that's a slower. We have to literally, go west, young man.
So are you doing like state by state certification, or is it county by county, or how's it working?
Yeah, we have to go state by state, and then even the counties have, their own rules. And then there are certain things like HUD homes, Park Model RV, trailer. So right now we can put out Park Model RV. We've just been certified in Arizona. And, legal and lawyers is a big part of our business. It's not what we want to do. We want to focus more on making houses. But trailblazing and unifying the marketplace in terms of certifications nationwide is definitely a big part of the Boxable challenge. And we're doing it.
Okay. So what does 5 years look like from now from Boxables?
Oh, man.
What do you think it looks like?
Well,
I know you said failure is being able to produce 5,000 or 6,000 homes a year, but what does success look like?
Yeah. So the answer, of course, is I don't know. I think what we're planning, though, is Boxzilla, as I mentioned before, which could be between 2 and 6 million square feet, something in that neighborhood. I think we certainly would have some factory franchises. At that point, I think we'll have staffed up to thousands of people. Our R&D center will be significantly staffed up. It's interesting, we actually don't have folks from the construction industry. I think we have one poor, lonely gentleman, but we do have people from from Boeing and Tesla and all sorts of tech companies, but very few people from the building construction industry. But in 5 years, I would imagine if we keep at this pace, so being public, obviously, company needs a lot of cash, needs billions of dollars to grow the speed that we're growing. So that's something, obviously, that's on our radar. And definitely a couple of franchise factories. And I don't know where they would be. Would be just opportunity driven by the folks that come in our doors.
Who'd like to own a Boxables franchise factory? I mean, that'd be kind of cool, right? You know,
very nice, thank you.
I think we could do a reggae for a Boxables franchise factory as a group and raise capital for that. It'd be pretty cool, right?
That'd be great.
You got to think of, remember what we said with Cardone when he was up here, right? First thought was why, and the second was how, and the third thought was how do we make money from that ourselves as individuals, right? And as you're processing through, start thinking through some of those things. Now, one of the things you want to be incredibly careful about, right, is you got to do a unique balance between where Boxable is and where a lot of companies are. And so where Boxable is a place where they've overcome regulation, they've overcome certification, they have product in the marketplace, they have a long waiting list, right? Now there's a lot of other companies that have incredible ideas, but they haven't overcome the regulatory fight yet. And that's something you have to be incredibly careful about. Like I shared before, like my parents, right? They owned a racetrack in Texas without gambling being legalized in the state of Texas, right? And that was probably a mistake by them. And so, you know, that's where that speculation comes in. And so you have to learn the difference, though, and you have to narrow down on that moment, right? When a company goes from speculation to reality. When a company is still fighting regulation and they've been able to beat regulation, knowing that there's still more regulation to happen. Right? As a business owner in today's America, you will always be in a regulatory battle. It will always be a part of the conversation again. The reggae industry itself, I think 7 days ago or 10 days ago, had 10 companies that were fined, right, by the SEC on how they were offering their circular, right, to the public and how they were offering their statements to the public. And those aren't companies that you should suddenly be like, oh, they suck because they got a fine from the SEC. Those are companies that you should read it and make your own educated decisions about it. But they're going through the regulatory fight. It's like you said, if OSHA had come in the beginning, you guys would have been in an uphill battle. I tell you right now, if OSHA had come in to our rehabs 10 years ago, right, they probably wouldn't have been very happy. And so this is kind of part of the conversation that you have to have is as you're going through the chaos of growth, it is a constant maneuvering to survive and to then thrive. And so that's a unique balance. And if somebody's never been through the maneuvering to survive and thrive yet, then they're not ready. They don't have the experience as a founder to go beyond, right? You say at your core you're a designer and I think at your core you're definitely an entrepreneur, right? And I think that's, you know, that's kind of the difference between somebody who's been able to battle, been able to get through, right, the obstacles and the chaos it takes for starting and growing a business, and somebody who doesn't, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely at my core an entrepreneur. And actually, I think this Boxable may actually be my first job where I've been employed. So I'm not sure you guys should really be investing with a guy this is his first job. But yeah, at my heart, I'm wired as an entrepreneur, and anybody sort of considering going down the path that I've gone down, my business partner, my son, Dutch, are going down. I think you're wired for it. You know, so whatever your skill is, whatever your backstop skill is, whether it's design and engineering for me, or if it's accounting and understanding money or anything, you're going to have to be a businessman. You're going to have to be a businessman. So if your core skill is business, well, you're streets ahead. If your core skill is design, it takes a couple of decades to catch up and figure out, you know, the business side of it for sure.
Yeah, I think, you know, there are many inventors, there are many scientists in the world that have incredible brains, right? But like we were sharing earlier, I've met people that are worth millions of dollars who are not very smart. And I've met people that are incredibly smart who've never made a super high income, right? And so, business knowledge, the ability to run or operate a business, right? There's some differences between those two things. If you heard Eitan this morning from the panel, he was just talking about marketing and advertising. He's right. When he looks at a company, he wants to know, what is their marketing? What is their advertising? Are they going to be able to sell a product? Are they going to be able to, stay in business? And so for you, right, when you're looking at your own business, right, what are some of the core things you need to do, right, to achieve what you want in the 5 years?
Yeah, so for us, it's all about first principles. I think the company is a design company at its core. If we give tours, by the way, we're in Las Vegas, not the worst place to visit if you want to come and take a tour. And we've set everything up in the factory as designers. Everything's beautiful, the product is beautiful, and I encourage everybody to come down. For us as a company, and companies can structure themselves in many different ways, it's all about the first principles. In terms of the product itself, it's, I could talk for hours, but the fewest number of components, the fewest number of unique components, the most symmetrical components. We study how far somebody has to walk to pick something up and move it. It's very, very interesting. And then in the company, with our staff, we actually only have a few rules, which I think some of you guys might find unusual. Let me see if I can remember them. The first one is all of our staff are told they can make mistakes, which is like, well, what's that about? And the reason for that is if you don't allow your staff to make mistakes, they're just going to shrivel up and they're not going to do anything. And we say to them, if you have a decision to make, onboard more decisions, make 5 decisions, make 5 decisions for every one. And then if you get 3 of those right, we're ahead. And if the 2 don't kill us, if the cost of the remediation of the 2 mistakes you made, we're ahead, rather than agonizing over one issue, maybe getting it right, maybe getting it wrong. So those 2 things right there. And then the third one is to actually take charge. We sort of decentralize decision-making and authority. And I was kidding with one of you guys backstage that I might be a little bit of a control freak, but we actually, in the company, we decentralize authority and we encourage everybody to move very, very quickly, act as autonomously as possible. You're not going to get beaten up if you make a mistake, but you will be rewarded if you do a great job. And that's, I think, one of the key factors in terms of the structure of Boxable, to allow us to move so rapidly. It's pretty amazing. And the other part is we have an incredibly transparent culture. So we live in this modern world where everything's out in the open. And Galliano, my partner, and I are pretty transparent people. So we just put it all out there. We're just being ourselves, but we found that people absolutely love it. People love us just being ourselves. So we have pretty transparent culture. Lots of mistakes. Everybody takes responsibility and make decisions quickly and make many of them. Decentralized authority. Those are some of the core principles at Boxable. And I think it's all centered around basically design engineering and innovation, actually, at its core, so.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think when companies, right, have a culture, right, and he didn't say we have this specific culture. He just said, here's what we do. Here's what we're working towards. Here's what we're having, right? I think that's definitely a defining part, of an organization. And what happens sometimes when a company, let's say, has $150 million raised, right? It's easy for them to become fat and inefficient. And so as you sit here and you listen to Paulo, what is he talking about, right? He's talking about efficiency. He's talking about speed. And so what you always want to do is kind of listen to the whole conversation as you're talking to a founder and listen to what they're telling you, that read between the lines. Like one of the first things I do when I'm thinking about investing with a company is I'll tell the founder I'm not going to invest with you, right? And I want to see how they react. I want to see what their response is, right? I want to know, right, do they come back and they continue to pursue the investment at all? How do they handle it? Do they get irritated? And I want to know what the core of a founder is. And so as Paulo's, a successful, right, founder of an organization and a company that is, making an impact on the world. Now you can look back at what was it like to talk to Paulo 24 months ago? What was it like to talk to Paulo 36 months ago, right? Because if you're talking to Paulo back then, it might be a very different conversation as you're looking through some of those things. I'm sure you didn't think you were going to have a 170,000 person waiting list 36 months ago. Maybe you did,
Yeah, no, nobody plans for that, right? Nobody plans for that. So, yeah, so the arc was actually pretty interesting. We decided, again, to become operators. You know, we moved out to Las Vegas, a no-tax state, 24-hour town for labor, pretty good traffic corridor. I think we made some good decisions there. And, you know, had a decent amount of luck as well, started building prototypes. And the boxable building product is these 3 building shells. They're like 3 Legos, the little square one and the rectangular one, and you know, when you think about Legos, and the one in the middle, that, you know, that one that nobody uses. So those 3 are the foundational boxes of our system. And the first year we went to IBS, the International Builders Show, we prototyped you know, a 40-foot boxable. And we had a nice show and everything was great. And then afterwards, at the end of the show, folks are saying, oh, great, what can we buy? And the answer was, oh, you know, we don't know. You know, it wasn't really terribly well thought out. And then after that, we got together with the team, small team, and came up with the ADU Casita. And we said, you know, let's make a couple of hundred, see how it goes, sell it in California, and plan to scale. And then, so the following year, we went to IBS, and that's where the luck comes in as well. And then the world exploded for us. Everybody found their use case. The designers and engineers did a great job with the Casita, this little square studio home, and it just exploded. And then the next thing we know, we have, we can talk about it now, we had Elon Musk's office calling. We thought it was a joke. He said, you know, can I have a Casita? And we're like, no, go away. And then we realized it was actually his office, and we said, yeah, absolutely. And then the DoD came calling, ordered 156. And, you know, we sat down and had a serious conversation and said, well, you know, 156, that's a lot. We don't have anything. We're in 10,000 square feet. Should we take this order? 10,000 square feet is about the size of this hall. And so as an entrepreneur, you know, what do you do? And we sat down, had a serious conversation and said, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? Well, the worst thing that can happen is we screw it up. And we'd screw up 156, and that would be the end of it. And that's entrepreneurship, right? So it's like, okay, you know, let's go for it. So that's what we did. So it was an interesting arc. And then when we came to raise money, you know, we'd put a few million in ourselves. I'm not exactly sure how much it crept up. And we had, you know, angels and VCs coming in to talk to us. And of course, as is typical when you have an entrepreneur and the money, there's a difference of opinion about what the value of the product is. And I actually side with the people with the money, not the entrepreneur, because it comes back to show me. So the entrepreneur is, the money is saying, you haven't done anything yet. And the entrepreneur is saying, but. And we said, well, we're not going to give away 2/3 of the company for $20 million because we can't get where we're going, and we're not going to do it. And then Galliano said, I think we can crowdfund this. And I'm like, well, hang on, isn't that like for fizzy pop and sneakers and whatever else and small stuff? Apparently not. You know, it's $150 million later, and it was just an absolute catalyst for everything. So it's been an interesting arc so far.
It's pretty amazing. Give him a round of applause, everybody. It's pretty amazing. So we're going to open it up to Q&A, right, from the audience. We want to give you guys a chance to ask questions. Yes, you know, earlier today I took all the questions with Grant, but you guys get a chance to ask questions. Take a moment, though, just on the sheet of paper in front of you and jot down 1 or 2 questions, right? You've been thinking about investing, you've been thinking about money, you've been thinking about wealth, right? And so we'll give you just a moment to do that. But while they're doing that, why don't you share a little bit, if somebody wanted to invest in Boxable through your Reg D, right, at this point, how would they do it, or what would be the way to do that?
Yeah, thanks. So back to the comments about the SEC.
Yeah.
So I'd rather say less than more, because every time I say something, we get held up because it's something we didn't disclose. But just go to boxable.com if you think it's right for you. You know, have at it. You know, Reg D is, I think, qualified over $1 million. Reg A or A plus is under. We're sort of gearing up for another raise, which we'll be doing every year. And, you know, think about your portfolio in terms of risk. We are high risk. We are high risk. The company, of course, can fail. Any company can fail. We saw, during COVID, companies that we thought could never go out of business, car rental companies, hotel chains, and then you get hit from a flank that you couldn't see coming. So I think you have to assess your own risk level. We have created a post-industrial space in terms of consumer goods, and I'm a consumer goods guy. We've done hundreds of different projects. Building construction is the last consumer product that isn't. Everything else is made in a factory, even rockets. Everything is made in a factory. Look, if you look around, even the panels in these walls, except for building construction. So it is the last product grab. It is the last consumer product, and it is massive. Not only is it the last one, but it's absolutely humongous. Is building construction bigger than housing? Yeah. I mean, is building construction bigger than automotive? Yes, of course. It's interesting. What is our competition today? We don't have any. I'm sort of secretly yearning for competition. Maybe I'll rue that, I don't know. But today, we're running pretty fast, growing pretty well. But it is very high risk, very high risk. So think about that.
That's good. So if you have a question, go ahead, raise your hand. If I can get one of my team to pick up the microphone, Ron, maybe you can grab it. Get an extra mic. So we'll go ahead and we're going to steal your mic because you still have this one, right? And you can just pull it off and hold it right up. Yeah. And we'll use this one. If you want to come up and get it, Mateo or Ron, and we'll go ahead and pass the mic out and let you guys ask some questions. While he's passing the mic out, one of the things I think is super exciting tomorrow morning, and I just want to precursor this, right? My business partner, Amy Vaughn, will be starting off the day tomorrow. And I don't know if you guys know how hard it is to get Amy to speak on stage, but it is like moving Mount Everest, right? To get her to come up and speak on stage. And she's one of the most brilliant, impactful, incredible entrepreneur speakers, women I've ever seen in the history of the planet. So you guys are pretty lucky that she's going to start the day tomorrow with you. So that's pretty freaking cool. It's pretty freaking cool. All right, let's go ahead and go to the first question. I saw the hands go up.
We're setting up mics right now. We got to stand right there. You'll be able to come up to the mic.
This is on. Yeah, this is actually on there.
Go ahead, my friend.
It's not on. Multiple mics.
It's on. I can hear it.
Testing.
Hello. My question was regarding the Boxables. Are you able to, home is where the heart is, and this is solving a crisis, but in my head I'm thinking, are these Boxables to where people can buy their home and then, say, move from Arizona to Minnesota with this thing instead of having to go to Minnesota and buy a new house or build a new house? Couldn't they take their Boxable that they had you build and bring it with them now?
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Is that okay? Okay, great. I'll just put it right there. Yeah, no, that's a great question. So, some of the things, like if I really go back and think, man, I got a lot of problems here. I'm going to hold this as well. Excuse me. So, yeah, I mean, so along with oh, I don't need it.
You don't have to hold the whole
Genius.
box. There you go.
Genius. So, along with new technology, you get some benefits that you didn't get with the old technology. So you're absolutely right, sir. You can pack it up. The current Casita unpacks in about an hour. And I think it probably packs down in about the same amount of time. These are built to modular code, stronger than. So these are basically concrete and steel homes. We have a forever philosophy about the building construction and strength of this product. This is probably the most expensive thing that a lot of people buy in their lives. It should last for their life and their children and their grandchildren's lives. That's our philosophy. Having said that, we have deployed, packed, and unpacked our product, the same one, dozens and dozens of times. So it's interesting when you think about that, how does that change the economics of the situation? So you want to move, and you can actually pack up your home and move it. Or as the business matures, what does that look like for a young couple that has a baby, that if they've got the right piece of land, they can add to their product? Or what does it look like for empty nesters that don't like their tax bill, and the kids have left, and they fight when they come over at Christmas, and they can remove a bedroom or two, so they can only visit one at a time or whatever. But you know, so yeah, so that level of portability, I think, is game changers. But I think that's going to take, if we're successful, I think that's going to take a generation to play out. But really, it's a great question, and yeah, massively, massively portable. It's pretty amazing.
We're going to go over here.
I have a question about zoning and regulations. So I'm sure that might be a challenge for people that would want to install one. How are you guys overcoming that? What limitations are there, and where does it work well? Where does it not?
Yeah, so our two biggest challenges are onboarding the smartest people we can find and certifications. In this pre-industrial space, as I mentioned, with this incredibly fragmented, it's as if you might buy a car in San Diego, and then you want to cross the border to in California, and you want to cross the border to Nevada, and somebody stops you and says, "Oh no, that car can only be driven in California. You can't bring it to Nevada." That's the situation we have with building construction today, and it's our job, it's our responsibility to trailblaze through that. It's going to take years. We're getting involved at the state and federal level. We have a lot of attorneys. The states are great. It's something they haven't seen before. They're working with us and working through those through those changes that they have to make and we have to make. It is the single biggest challenge that Boxable faces is the zoning. You've absolutely put your finger on it. However, there are some common codes like modular, so that's a godsend for us, frankly, along with some trailer and RVs. You know, so when you think that Boxable is a higher standard than the highest standard in the land, which is modular, and then we're classifying it as an RV or a trailer, and the state is happy, and it's like, okay, we'll do that for now. We'll do that for now. But it is a huge challenge. It's a multi-year challenge. But I have to say, it does and will get easier, because as the states become familiar with the product, and they see that first we're certified in Arizona, that's the first one. I think we're finally through that. And then we're doing California next, Nevada, of course, our home state. But yeah, massive, massive challenge, and it's our burden, and we're doing it.
Thank you.
Good question. Let's keep going.
Hi, good afternoon, Dutch and Paolo. I'm Michelle Costello, and I'm here from Hawaii. I'm an apartment owner and also a real estate developer. And my question is related to strategic partners for shipping. There's tremendous opportunity if you leave the mainland, continental United States, and provide housing in Alaska and Hawaii. And I wanted to know if you had any strategic partners such as Matson, or how you were tackling the enormous issue of shipping these products to these types of locations.
Yeah, Michelle, that's a great question. So I'll give you a couple of key metrics that allowed us to start the company. So as I mentioned earlier, building construction, buildings are big. Most factories today make something that's 14 foot wide, if you just keep that number in your head. They need a permit, flag car, front and rear. It's a complete disaster. They might be able to get 150 miles from their factory. The magic number is 8.5 foot wide. 8.5 foot wide and 13.5 feet from the blacktop to the top of the delivery. And in Europe, it'll be 14 feet, so a little easier. So Boxable packs down to those key dimensions to 8.5 foot wide, and then on its trailer, from the ground to the top is 13.5 feet. And by the way, instead of pulling it with a $250,000 big rig, we can pull ours with a pickup truck. And instead of pulling one with a big rig, we can pull two with a pickup truck. So you can see the economics there are pretty amazing. And then when it gets on site, it almost, in rough numbers, can triple in size. So you can see that it's just the gift that keeps on giving, that we can, for the volume that we ship, we can ship it, we can have we can ship one truck instead of 3 for the volume. And then in terms of shipping overseas, they're basically container sized. They don't go in a container, they are the container. So again, that was a big part of the project, to make them transportable by land, sea, and rail. And in fact, at Boxilla, we're looking at, for the first regional factory, rail is going to be, I think, a big one for us, to get a rail spur to go to DCs around the country. But for Hawaii, where you are, there is a lack of skilled labor. There's a lack of skilled labor and there's a lack of quality, very variable quality, and it's hard to build in Hawaii because we've had guys come through our doors and we have some projects planned for Hawaii. So now, ship a Boxable, the quality's there. Any warranty issues, there's a company to talk to. You know exactly what you're getting.
Thank you.
Good question. Good question.
Yeah, that's great.
All right, we'll take these last two.
My name is Henry Burson. I'm from Daytona Beach, Florida, and I'm in construction. What's so ironic, just 2 weeks ago, I told my wife, I don't have to worry about robots taking my job. So I expected to be in business for a long time. Now, who would coordinate if there are repairs needed? Because that's what I specialize in, repairs. If there's a repairs, do the repairer have to be certified by you guys, or how would that work?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. And if I can broaden, if you don't mind, if I can broaden your question a little bit, who installs it, right? Who installs the product? Who unpacks the product? It has to be done correctly, it has to be weathertight, and it has to be done to our standards. So,
there has to be foundations, there has to be plumbing, there has to be electric, right? All of those things have to be done correctly in order for, right, a Boxable to function and work, just like any other, development or any other construction, right? The most important part, right, is once that foundation is laid, right, now the product can come in and obviously erected.
Yeah, exactly. So we do everything from the outside of the 4 walls in. We make it easy. All the gray water, the normal water, the electric, everything ports to one corner. But we will have authorized installers. We're now making plans for a Boxable U, sort of a Boxable university. We'll have a lower grade of authorized installer. There'll be online certs, but really we want people to come and spend 2 weeks with us to learn everything Boxable, to be authorized installers. And, the developers, like Dutch, it's easy. These are professional people. But if you've got the onesie, twosie customer, there has to be a third party involved for the hand-holding. And that third party is going to do basements and driveways and septic or city sewer and things of things of that nature. And we don't consider it our responsibility doesn't end when the product leaves the factory. We're looking at this problem from the raw material supply chain to the configuration and the financing. We're looking at the whole thing from soup to nuts, but we can't do it all at once. So we start with the kernel that we can start with and then grow out from there.
Great question. Great question. Give those who ask questions already a hand though, right? Because
given the propensity of governments to screw things up, what stops do you may have in place or helps? Because when you come in with a house that's already pre-built, you're taking money from the local governments. They're not going to like that. I know you still have to have an inspection or whatever in there, but you're taking a lot of development fees away from governments. And I just see advanced regulation coming, additional fees that are going to be topped on. And I don't know if there's anything you can actually do about it, but obviously your costs are going to continue to increase as it goes. Because I mean, when I first heard about Boxable, we were about 50 grand for a casita, and now I think we're a little over 60 grand plus delivery. So costs are going to keep going up. So where's the balance point of from affordability to not becoming affordable?
Yeah, no, great. So there's a question in 3 parts. So I've got to remember all three. But the first one is, I'm not going to get myself in trouble with my opinion about the government, which is not very high. So yeah, a lot of friction, screw things up. Absolutely. I think in terms of local building inspectors and revenue and things like that, I don't think that the local municipality sees it that way. They're not looking at the bottom line. They're actually not looking at money, the individual people on the ground. They're just looking to do their job and do it quickly. So what we're finding is the first time they see it, they don't like us because it's new and they've got to scratch their head. And Joe, the inspector, has to come out with all apologies to any Joes out here, but Joe, the building inspector, the second time he sees it, it's like, oh, it's a boxable. It's a boxable, and they're happier, and he can get off, earlier. In terms of costs, I would disagree with you. Respectfully, we've gone from $50,000 to $60,000. We've had several years. We've had a pandemic. I don't know what costs have not gone up. I don't believe our costs are going to increase. I believe our costs are going to decrease because we're making homes by the hundreds now. We're then going to be making homes by the thousands and by the tens and hundreds of thousands. And there's so much meat on the bone. There's so much fat in the current supply chain and business. There's so much limited and secular engineering that when you look at the whole thing, the opportunities for cost reduction are everywhere. And my goal is not for prices to go up. I have to be careful what I say, but my goal is for prices to go down. When I think about
but the gap is big, right? From the cost of new construction, the cost to build, to the cost of a boxable, this gap is enormous, right? And so it will take a long way, but there's a couple other things with it too, like speed to market, right? Boxable has got to move, right? If boxable can't get to the market, they can't get widespread appeal in the next 5 years, they've already missed their bubble, right? And so they need to be speed to market. That's one of the things you hear them, efficiency. How fast can we build? How fast can we build? Because when there's market acceptance, right, it's much more difficult for regulatory bodies to ban something or keep something out. And so speed to market is incredibly important. But I also think, when your largest builders in America are laying off people and they're ending new construction projects, right, there's still going to be a housing shortage, right? Boxable could produce 100,000 homes in the next year, which would be a huge amount of homes, right? Way beyond what current capacity is. But at the same time, it wouldn't even scratch the surface. And so I think it's a long ways. Now you're going to hit counties. There are absolutely counties in America where there is organized crime, right? And I mean by organized crime, I mean politicians who feed their friends and family, right? Politicians who feed, right, their friends and their buddies, and they keep businesses out and they keep other people from being successful, right? I'm not going to say specific cities and counties and town because I don't want to make it an obstacle for my company to be able to do real estate in those cities and towns, but those things absolutely exist within America. It still exists, right? And so for one of the things you have to do, right, is you're going to have to sometimes not fight battles and sometimes choose the battles you're going to fight, right? In business, you need to avoid war at all possible costs, right? Like the TV show Billions, where they're constantly fighting wars, is not reality. If you're constantly fighting wars, your business will fail. You'll run out of emotional energy, you'll run out of money, it's not the way you're going to go. And you can't fight regulations, you can't fight the SEC, you can't fight the government because they have more money, they're bigger than you can ever even imagine. So what you have to be able to do, right, is understand how to play the game. You can't be a politician if you're going to run and operate and grow a business. I can't control left blue, I can't control middle, I can't control libertarian, I can't control all of these different things. What I can control is playing the game and understand how to play the game. So there will be absolutely markets, right, where Boxable is not going to be go into. But there's going to be the opposite as well. There's going to be markets that say, hey, if we can have a better housing product, right, for people to live in, then people are going to move to our city. Because in the reality, in today's America, virtual living, virtual working is paradigm, and it's important. And so places where people want to move to that can have affordable housing is incredible. There's still beach cities, right, in America where there's housing shortage and there's affordable housing. There's also beach cities that cost millions of dollars for 2,000 square feet. or even 1,000 square feet. And so it's all about those places, and the shortage is just so big, and our population is going to constantly increase. And if they followed, my belief of, add 100 million people to America, then the housing shortage would be even greater, and then housing prices would really go up, and all of us invested in a, housing REIT would make lots of money. So anyways, next question.
Can I just add one thing
Go ahead.
to that for this gentleman? And we actually haven't felt anybody trying to ban us. Quite the opposite. We're politically agnostic. We're in a highly politicized environment, and some things are in favor and some things are out of favor. But on the left, the right, all of it, everybody wants to fix the housing crisis. Everybody wants to improve the quality and put more
And he's
roofs
not the
over
one fighting
people's heads.
that local battle anyways.
Yeah.
Those of us being distributors are the ones fighting the local battle, right? And so for me, I'm going to figure out which market I can have my boxable town or my boxable park or my boxable area in, and then that's where I'm going to build. And if in, let's say Brandon, Florida, I can't do that, but in Philadelphia I can, then I will do it. And if in, Philadelphia I can't do it, and I can do it in Houston, Texas, right, which has, a little bit lighter when it comes to some of the zoning and construction things, then that's where I'm going to do it, right? But the housing shortage is a nationwide problem. It's not a one city problem. And so there are different cities that you're going to be able to deploy in. And then as a widespread appeal, like at the end of the day, right, there are laws that cannot stand in the way of us being entrepreneurs. And there is enough of a margin gap where it just makes sense to do what you need to do to be able to make a boxable acceptable within individual marketplaces. Last question, and then we have to wrap up the panel. I apologize for gentleman who's waiting.
I have a question for Paulo. I was wondering, earlier you were talking about sort of approaching business from the perspective of your expertise, and I was just kind of wondering what might be some challenges you faced or sort of mindset shifts you went through in your journey from an engineer to a CEO.
Yeah,
asked by an engineer.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, if I just go back to day one, I just started the licensing model, from day one. And I definitely spent several decades just focused on design and thinking, build it and they will come. No, that doesn't happen. You have to backfill with the shit that you don't want to do, and you just have to find a way to enjoy it. So you can't be a prima donna. You can't be narrowly focused. You're going to have to learn those other skill sets. And I mean, I can read a contract, pretty decent negotiator. I hate it. Reading a contract, can't stand reading a contract. We have attorneys, they love reading contracts. So you just have to say, you can't just be the best at one thing. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, you're going to have to be at least average on the rest of the stuff. And of course, surround yourself with people who are brilliant at those things that you are not skilled at.
Awesome question. We'll take the last one. Go for it.
You touched on financing boxable product. If you could elaborate on your efforts to partner with mainstream lending and trying to get boxable as an acceptable product for mainstream banks to be able to lend on, is oftentimes that's the biggest challenge for a consumer to be able to purchase a home, is getting that financing.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've only just started to work on that. We've really been doing developments with the government, with folks like Dutch, who I think are going to be great as we get into the consumer grade.
And it's a horrible time for him to work on that, by the way, right? Like lenders are tighter. They're not looking at as more alternative products right now. I mean, they have pinched their cheeks together as tight as they possibly can right now, right? But you'll see as you'll see the first time interest rates drop, as you see interest rates steady out, as people see where this economy is going to go in the next 6 months, you'll see them start to open up, right? But as you continue to see the bank failures that'll happen during the next 6 months, right? They're going to be forced to eventually lower interest rates, right? It's going to happen. And also you have to understand, right? You have a Democratic president with a Democratic, right, head of the Fed, right? And so they're going to want a re-election, and the only way they're going to be able to get re-election is to spike economy, right? To the end of the day, it's always going to be the economy stupid when it really comes down to it, right, with who gets elected and not elected, because lots of times that's what sways the middle. Maybe there's no hope at all for the Democrats at this point. I'm not really sure, right? With the consumer consciousness, right, nationwide and the polls that are out there, right? If we have people on our team and staff that are on the left, that's not me wanting to offend people on the left. It's just the way the American mindset is at this point, right? And so you'll see when it opens back up, I think you'll find that there's going to be great ability for people who want to lend. And the best thing that I would tell Paulo and his team to do, but it's really going to be us doing a lot of that work as well, is to work with a bank and give a bank an exclusive product. Banks love exclusive products, and they love exclusive products with security. So I think, you'll see in the future, I think you'll see that available just like it is for buying mobile homes, just like you see it is for different things that are out there. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So financing is definitely a part of our offering down the road as we get to selling to those consumers in large volumes. And, in the same way that, so if you put a mental image to it, you should be able to go to Amazon and buy a boxable home, get it shipped next day. Nobody needs a home next day. But as a reach goal, as a vision,
During natural disasters, they might.
Well, FEMA is a whole other topic where I think we can definitely help.
All right, let's give Paulo a big round of applause, everybody. Thank you, Wilson. Glad to have you.
Great way to meet you, by the way.
Yeah, very good one. Very good.
You want to hop off?